What do you got against Ready Player One?
Don't we all collectively have something against Ready Player One?
Oh, no, it's dog shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's mainly the angle I'm coming at it from.
The only part when I saw it in theaters with my dad.
Yeah.
My dad loved the book. The only part I liked when I saw it is there's a whole scene, like there's a whole 15 minutes of that movie that happens in The Shining.
And you hadn't seen The Shining yet.
And I hadn't seen The Shining. And I was like, this is pretty cool because it's like in scenes of The Shining, but it doesn't feel shitty or like they're just superimposed in. I mean, they are, but it looks well done. Mm-hmm. And then I saw The Shining, and I was like, fuck Ready Player One.
Your only redeeming qualities are those of a better film.
And also, I'm sick of people using my boy, the Iron Giant, and stuff. Because the whole point of that movie is he's like, hey, I ain't a gun, I ain't a weapon. And then other movies like this and Space Jam are like, hey, what if we bring Iron Giant back to fight a bunch of people and be a big gun?
Hey.
So, welcome to our podcast, where today we're going to talk about why Iron Giant is the best movie. Chris, go.
I have not prepared for that conversation, but in another sense, I've been preparing my whole life for that conversation.
Okay, I'll take over. It makes me cry every time. That's why it's the best.
A plus.
A plus.
Eating Soup Alone is a podcast hosted by me, Christopher Crumley, and co-hosted by Nicholas Johnson. We try our best to ramble incoherently about a handful of movies at least once a week.
We're actually going to talk about
Old Dark House.
1932.
Or 1.
Pretty sure it's 32.
I've seen several different places where it says 1, some say it's 2. I believe you, though.
Yeah.
I believe you're right on it. And Carnival
of Souls.
You were supposed to say of, and then I would say Souls. Souls.
1964.
That I'm just going to believe you on. I don't
Okay.
say anything else. You've seen these movies both?
Yes, many
I'm
times.
I assume a bunch of times.
Yes, yeah.
I saw them for the first time. They're 2 movies you've been trying to get me to watch forever. We almost did last week, but instead we watched 13
Salem's
Ghosts
Lots.
and Salem's Lot and Scary Movie, which I regret. Even before seeing these 2 movies, I regret.
I forgot we even did that shit. That was awful.
Watched 13 Ghosts. I was like, should have seen.
Yeah, that was awful.
Carnival of Souls.
Especially 13 Ghosts. Like, I don't know. I feel like there had to have been some
let's talk about this again.
oversight where at some point, like, I guess it's just a testament to the idea that, like, nobody's in charge. There's no authority. Like, if you're a teacher and your student hands you that, your first thing that you're going to say is, like, you rush this. You got to start over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
Did you write this last night? Come on.
Like,
you can do better than this.
Like, listen, Old Dark House, Carnival of Souls, right off the bat, I love both of them.
Yeah.
I do arguably have more to say about why I don't like 13 Ghosts and why I do like these 2 movies.
Are you going to review?
All right, this is 13 Ghosts Part 2.
No, do you have anything else you want to add, though, real quick?
About 13 Ghosts? No, fuck that movie.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I'm going to DM Matthew Lillard and be like, come on, man, you're so much better than this.
No, you know what? I don't blame Matthew Lillard. It feels like he tried his best. I don't know if we brought it up last week or not, but there is a moment in that movie where they're making fun of him, like, ghosts. He's like, don't make fun of me. And I'm like, ooh, Matthew Lillard, just getting it again in everything he's in. But also at the same time, Matthew Lillard's making money. I'm happy for him.
So here's the few things I know.
No wrong to me.
So here's the few things I know about the Old Dark House. One, it's called the Old Dark...
Lillard.
No Matthew Lillard. It's called the Old Dark House because that was a very popular, sort of sub-genre of horror. Still is to this day kind of a thing, but especially at the time. Yeah, basic rundown. Horrible storm, and 2 separate groups of strangers have to take refuge in a house. So that's one of the first things I want to say. The thing that I love the absolute most about the Old Dark House, my end-all be-all, the cherry on top, as well as the chocolate filling. It's both the meat and the potatoes and the garlic salt on top.
Wow.
Is nothing is supernatural about this movie.
Yeah.
Basically what happened is like someone knocked on our door and said, hey, it's really bad outside, can I hang out overnight? And then we were like, yeah. And then like your mom came over and your dad was there and they were drunk and they got into a fight. And then for some reason my sister came over and started crying about how her husband like kicked her out of her house or whatever. And then Elric shows up for some reason and wants to murder you, and I have to try to stop him. But then someone, decides also they want to light the house on fire.
Also, all the while, your 100-year-old grandfather is upstairs.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it's like everything feels supernatural and eerie and horrible and gothic and stuff. And, it kind of reminds me of like, I don't know, sort of like how in like an Edgar Allan Poe story, like say like The Telltale Heart, other than the fact that he can hear the heart beating in the floorboards, which is also could just be a hallucination. There's no like point where a ghost shows up or something.
Yeah.
Like it's just human horror, right? Like the scares in this thing are just real scares.
Yeah.
Right? They're really things that could happen. Like, now don't get me wrong. Never, ever, ever in my life or your life are we ever going to be driving somewhere and it's going to be so nasty outside that we ask a stranger if we can stay in their house overnight.
I was thinking about that at the beginning where they're driving through the water and it's raining and they're in that old Model T or whatever. I'm like, oh, fuck, that's right. This is a point in time where cars are just one step above a horse.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's the only thing that is a little bit of a stretch because, like, when we talk about, like, the Blair Witch Project, it's very easy to imagine that we could end up lost in the woods. It's a little bit harder. Honestly, this is just an amped-up version of my mom let me spend the night at my friend's house, and then their parents have been fighting all night.
Yeah.
And I'm still awake,
Yeah.
So anyways, this is your first time watching it. This is also a golden age horror film.
Yeah.
When Universal, we watched that little Dracula documentary, which clued me into the fact that I can never fucking say his name, but Carl Laemmle, basically.
Sure.
The guy who founded Universal, from my understanding. Despite the fact that
Laemmle is actually Italian for Universal.
That's very interesting.
I just made that up.
Okay. I believed you because of your heritage. You took advantage of me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyways, his like great granddaughter was explaining basically that like even though
It was his niece.
horror movies were basically it was his niece.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she was very old.
She was.
God rest her soul.
And it was maybe the early 90s, so for sure dead. R.I.P.
Yeah. Anyways, basically just saying like, yeah, the bank was dropping money off to them, like because of horror movies. He wasn't a big fan of making them, and that's just why did I tell that story? Bleh. But Universal, just cranking out horror movies in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. But 30s it really kind of kicked off. People were loving it. They're eating it up. That's when your Frankenstein happens. That's when your Dracula happens. That's when your Bride of Frankenstein happens. That's when your Wolfman happens. That's when your Mummy happens. That's when your Invisible Man happens, as well as a slew of other just B and C horrors, like just like the Invisible Ray and just shit like that. But you would still use like your Bela Lugosi and your Lon Chaney Jr. and stuff like that. Anyways,
fun fact I learned today. Back in those days when they'd play movies, and going to the movies was like an all-day event. They'd play two together. They'd play their shittier, lower production movie, and then the big blockbuster. So that's why the first movie would be called the B movie, and that's where that comes from.
Nice.
And then trailing behind that would be a trailer for another movie. That's why they're called trailers.
Nice.
And then the second movie.
That is a fun fact.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yeah, no problem.
But I'm running up to the main point that I guess I don't know exactly how I want to articulate it, but I do want to say, I suppose, what you thought. Because, like I said, I don't know exactly how to articulate it, but I guess it's just interesting to me that your first exposure to Golden Age horror is not going to be like Frankenstein or Dracula. Even though you said you've seen Frankenstein as a young boy, but don't necessarily remember it. But, by and large, this would be like your first time.
Yeah, definitely.
So talk a bit is what I'm saying. You talk. I've been doing a lot of talking.
I don't have a whole lot of experience with Golden Age horror movies. I saw Frankenstein as a kid a bunch.
A bunch?
Yeah, like it was just on. I have flashes of memories of Boris Karloff as Frankenstein. I remember watching it with my dad. I remember watching it with my grandfather. I remember being on at Disney World. Just stuff like that. I just remember being afraid of Frankenstein. That's pretty much it.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, no, I don't have much experience with these Golden Age horror movies. I love them aesthetically, but that's pretty much it. And watching the Old Dark House, I never found it, and I don't think I'll find any of these scary.
Yeah.
I found it very charming, though.
Yeah.
And I can, one foot in, one foot out, appreciate a lot of it. Loved so many of the shots in this movie. I said to you at one point, just between us guys, just the most pretentious opinion that I have. Oh God, Chris, I love black and white. I love black and white so much. I think this movie does black and white very well. Like, we watched Carnival of Souls right after, and I thought it was just a movie that happened to be in black and white. But this one, I was like, there are so many shots in this that work so well because you can just,
a lot of shadow work.
Yeah, exactly. You can just drape so much of it in just black that it works. Like, a lot of shots of Boris Karloff, are just close-ups of his face with these just insane shadows over his scars and just the topography of Boris Karloff's face.
Yes, he's got a very... I'm not saying anything new, but he's got a very, very...
Yeah.
particular thing about his visage.
And I think they use him really well in this movie. Again, I don't, besides being afraid of Frankenstein as a kid, I don't know how Boris Karloff comes off in other movies or how.
Well, it'd be interesting actually is to watch The Mummy, because The Mummy he plays the Mummy.
Yeah.
I'd like to perhaps, not to table talk too much, but maybe do that and then pair it with the Brendan Fraser Mummy.
Okay, yeah, I do that. Yeah.
But it's an insane feature, mainly because Boris kind of plays against what they usually made him do, which was the lumbering mute. And he's a beautifully elegantly well-spoken person.
Oh, he's not the Mummy?
No, he's the Mummy. That's the weird thing. Yes, you're going to love the Mummy, because that Mummy doesn't show up until the sequels. He's a totally different Mummy in the original one.
Okay.
In the original one, his name is Imhotep.
Yeah, just like the Brendan Fraser one.
Yeah, and he is I hope that's the right name, because I know they changed it later. Maybe it's Karis. It's either Karis or Imhotep, but I think it's Imhotep. And I think Karis is the later lumbering kind of one.
Okay.
But basically, it's so odd, because it's almost not, as you were saying a second ago, you were never scared necessarily watching the Old Dark House. Same thing with The Mummy. It's a horror in the sense that people kind of get murdered and someone's back from the dead and whatnot. But other than that, the story is that he's come back to life because something happened in his lifetime where he was put to death for some shit, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of fucked up afterlife plans that he had to be eternally with his true love, with his soulmate, right? And I don't know what it was, maybe he was, denied the opportunity to be reincarnated as well, or whatever it is, but basically his true love has been reincarnated, and his whole, shtick, the gimmick that he's, working is that he's trying to get to her and perform some sort of rite to, I think, kill her, or, make her live forever so that he can be with her either way.
So the Brendan Fraser movie, yeah.
Yeah. But without any of the action or comedy or anything like that. It's just quiet and slow, and you seem more familiar with the Brendan Fraser one than I.
Just briefly.
All I remember is bugs crawling underneath the skin.
Yeah, it's basically that.
Yeah.
With bugs, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Does he talk a lot in that? Does the Mummy talk a lot in that?
Yeah, Imhotep is a whole character. He's a very good-looking guy. I think he starts out as the zombie, and then I think as it goes on, he gets more and more put together.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens in the other one. There's a beautiful makeup design that you really have to look at, because it's an old movie. You'd have to be very close. But slowly, the bandages are fading on his face. Oh. They stick around for a little while, but they get less and less as the movie goes on. Anyways,
nothing I love more than old school practical effects like that.
Yeah.
I've talked to you about this before. I watch a lot of VFX videos and stuff like that. And nothing I love more than, because newer VFX is oh cool, they did this kind of render mapping, and they did this kind of shading, and this is how subsurface scattering works and stuff like that. But with old stuff, it's hey, this is a magic trick.
Yeah.
This is what they're doing. This is how they're tricking you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much cooler.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that specifically because there's a point where they use the model card for the landslide that happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why that came up. Yeah, that was very interesting to talk about. Not as interesting as it is now, I guess.
Yeah. But back to Boris Karloff.
Yes.
I think he's used very well in this.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't say anything in this movie.
Yeah.
And he's just a big, scary man the entire time. And he's great. He's just hulking around all the time. He's serving drinks, and then later he gets drunk and starts smashing through shit.
Yes.
I think my biggest takeaway from this movie, my two biggest takeaways, A, which is the smaller one, always gets me when I watch a movie pre-Jaws, I think. Just end. They're just over.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going, and it's going, and it's going, and it's done. It's just over.
Yeah. I love specifically the Universal. It goes at the end, and then it says, it's a Universal picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was the same for this and then Dracula, which we watched the next night.
Yeah.
And it was really taken by Saul at the end.
Yeah.
I was telling you, yeah, he comes down. He's just got one hand on the banister from around the corner, and everyone's like, oh, God, after they tell him, you know, we got a crazy brother locked upstairs who wants to set the house on fire. Everyone's like, oh, God, and everyone's running, and then he eventually comes down the stairs, and he's just this little old guy. And he's like, you have to help me. These people are crazy. They killed our sister, and I know, and I'm not crazy, so they're keeping me locked up in there. And I was like, you know what? I got no reason to. But I'm giving this guy the benefit of the doubt. I immediately believe him. I hope this is where this movie is going. And no, almost immediately, he's like, I'm going to set this place on fire.
Yeah, and then he's all like, and Saul had a javelin in his hand, and he's like throwing the knife at the guy.
That did take me out of it, though. When cool guy is talking to him, and he's like, oh, like backing away and stuff like that. I'm like, I get it with Boris Karloff, but this guy, 1.5 feet shorter than you. And he's 80 years old. Just push him.
Yeah. And he's holding the knife in a not very, like, sturdy way. It's not like he's got a good handle on it.
Kick him. Just stand a foot away and just give him a good kick.
They didn't kick back then.
They were gentlemen back in the 30s.
But yeah, side note, just a shout out. You were shouting out Boris Karloff's visage. Another shout out to Ernest Thesiger.
Oh, my God.
Such a fascinating man.
Just such
an interesting,
stark-looking man. Just so fun to
he
look at.
He looks like he was designed by Tim Burton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's got that weird point at the end of his nose. That's not like...
But no chin. It's like all just straight neck.
Yeah.
And a beautiful, beautiful speaking voice.
Yeah.
And yeah, just from the top, like just to run it down, like I just love how like... Guys, all these like weird little things that come out of left field, like just immediately he's like, sorry, my sister's a bit deaf. Oh, also she's obsessed with the Bible. Oh, also we used to have this sister that died. Oh, also, watch out. Our butler's going to get drunk and violent later.
Yeah.
Also, Saul's upstairs. No one's upstairs. Oh, my 100-year-old dad lives upstairs. And then suddenly they're talking to the dad, and the dad's like, yep, we keep Sal in the attic. Something's wrong with him. I feel really bad for Sal.
That's an old woman, right?
I'm pretty sure it's an old woman, yeah. And
and I love when he's like, oh, there's a lantern upstairs. I'm not that strong. You can go get it, right? Yeah,
and then there's that point where he's like, well, how big is this lamp? And he's like, oh, it's pretty small. You should be able to grab it. Anyways. Because at first he's trying to lie about how it's so heavy and he can't do it.
Also, shout out to the sister. Don't know her character or actress's name.
But
I love her. She's great. No beds.
Yeah.
I think she reminds me, in a way, of... the mom in Pink Flamingos.
Okay.
The egg woman.
Yeah.
Just loud, yelling the same shit over and over again. Gets me every time. I love it.
And also, just shouts out anytime there's blasphemy. I love when Ernest goes on his little thing about like, oh yes, that's right. My sister would like to practice her primitive rituals. She would like to thank her gods for all the prosperity and blessings that have befallen this family. Go ahead, continue with your sacred rites.
Yeah, no, I do. I also appreciate that about once again Ernest.
Yeah,
I couldn't think of his name. That's another thing I appreciate about Ernest is that's this whole thing. He's like, hey, here's a bunch of exposition about what's going on in the house. Also, fuck God.
Yeah. So this is something else I know about the Old Dark House. It's also based on a novel, an English novel, across the pond, and it was specifically supposed to satirize or socially comment on the class structure in the UK.
Okay.
So that'd be an interesting thing to get a hold of, as well as probably a little bit of explanation, because I'm assuming that things were a little bit different when it was written. I want to say that the book was written in like 1890. Obviously, there are a lot of things that will probably still be very relatable. But yeah, that would just be interesting, because like I feel like the fact that like, the sister's death probably means something in the novel or whatever, in the context of like what's going on, and each of these characters, like you get a little bit of that in the movie with like Porterhouse, the big fat man who's named after a steak, being like, yeah, I'm a titan in industry who, realizes money isn't everything, but it's also really important. And then there's the other guy who's like, I went off to war and now I have PTSD, although we call it shell shock. Anyways, I couldn't care if I had $1 in my pocket or not. All I care about is having a belly full of liquor. There's all those kinds of chants, where they're kind of having that dialogue. And yet, not to take any points away from the film, because I love the film, but it feels like almost a weird holdover from the book, because I just don't feel like in the movie it's terribly present.
Yeah.
It's played up more for the horror, I guess.
Yeah.
This is genuinely a movie. I agree with you. Like, these Golden Age horror movies do not scare me the way that like the Blair Witch Project does.
Yeah.
It does not scare me the way that The Conjuring does. I think it is, like, I don't know what the word is, like very, very mildly unsettling.
It's spooky.
It's kind of spooky, yeah. Like,
That's exactly how I feel about Halloween.
yeah.
Halloween has never scared me, but the entire
that's
time
not
I'm like,
spooky.
ooh, I'm a little spooked
It's
out
a
right
little
now.
spooky.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never finish Halloween and think like, ooh, I better look behind my curtain.
Yeah.
Because I know there's not going to be a man in a Michael Myers mask there. But the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, okay, this is a little spooky.
It's atmospheric, yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that like this movie is a movie that I could almost like genuinely like see myself being scared by.
Okay.
Not in 2021. And I don't want to go so far as to say like, oh, if I was a kid in 1931, because probably Dracula would have made me shit my pants in 1931.
Yeah.
Anything would. But like I feel like there's a context in which the Old Dark House is actually pretty scary, especially compared to like Dracula or Frankenstein. Because Dracula and Frankenstein, great stories. A little corny in terms of how they're supposed to be scary. But I feel like this movie has legs. I really feel like there's something that works about this movie, or potentially could still work, or is like maybe perhaps like a bit timeless. Like, I really think this is a strong movie from the Golden Age. The only thing that I think is a little wonky is it does have a little bit of a sing-songy English, like, I told that to my baker too, and then he gave me 4 loaves.
Yeah.
Nickels in my shoes.
No, that's exactly what doesn't work for me about
that
it.
stuff does not work.
Is
I think I even forewarned you before we began.
Yeah, yeah. It's just the blatant 1930s of it all.
Yeah.
It is.
Just, well, shine your shoes, mister.
Yes.
I don't know what
it
that
is
means. What do you mean, shine your shoes, mister?
just how very clearly this is just a set.
Yeah.
And again, this is just me complaining about the movie being old.
Yeah.
And, like, very obviously the same hallway 3 times from 3 different angles. And just oh my God, the cool guy and the girl that shows up later just being like, hey, I know I've known you for less than 112 minutes, but
I'm gonna propose
let's
to
get
you.
married. And yeah, I just feel like whether it's a movie or like the story of your grandparents getting together, it's always like that. It's like,
Yeah.
and then 2 weeks later we were married.
Yeah. Well, anyways, other than that, let me jog my memory a little bit. Okay, I can say this. Saul is an example of something I think is always scary. Anytime someone passionately starts reciting the Bible, that's scary. What else works? Yeah, creepy old dude. I just love the fact that he's laying in bed and he's just kind of like, yes, my oldest son. There's something wrong with him. He just wants to hurt and destroy. Oh, poor Saul. Anyways, I hope Morgan's not drunk, because Morgan will let him out. Yeah, see, we keep Morgan around because he's the only one that can handle Saul, but, sometimes he gets drunk and he lets Saul out. And if Saul gets out, he'll most certainly burn the house down.
And I love that too. It's not like there's There's no like real mystery about it. Like, ooh, Saul is evil and this and that. She's just like, you know, he tried to set the house on fire. And when he comes out,
he'll
he's
do
like,
it again.
I'm gonna set the house on fire.
Yeah.
I think I think what works best in this movie is Saul.
Yeah.
Like when he comes out and he's ranting and doing the Bible stuff and monologuing and walking around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He feels straight out of just a modern movie when an insane person is monologuing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's
Whereas
why,
the old dude in bed kind of feels a little Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think maybe it's just a testament to how people don't know how to play insane people still. Or maybe it's just, you know, this is something that is held over from them. He's just compelling to watch.
Yeah.
He's great.
I love his little slip-on shoes with no socks.
Yeah. And I love that he almost succeeds. He starts setting shit on fire before the movie's over.
I'd really... I hate to say this, but I kind of would, depending on who it is, love to see someone try to redo this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know who. Because I would not be so bold as to say, oh, I want to see this movie get remade. No. I'd like to see someone specific redo this. I don't know who right now.
Steven Spielberg.
Nope, he would ruin that. He would make that very bad.
I don't know why he's still making movies.
But like, you know,
Player
the
One.
Lighthouse Man is making a Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And I feel like that has legs.
Oh, yeah.
That could work. Because I think he understands that you can't really do the big Hollywood thing. Like, no disrespect, I haven't seen it. I'm talking out of my ass. Crucify me if you'd like. But The Invisible Man, I'm sure it's probably fine for what it is. And that's a very specific type of remake to do that does not always work. And that's what I want to focus on, is the times it doesn't work. When you're like, yeah, let's take this hokey idea from the 30s that's really atmospheric and spooky, but try to make it actually scary. And it just doesn't always work. And I feel like they're not going to do that with Nosferatu.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
The Invisible Man, but from my understanding, it's basically like, hey, let's take the concept of a man that is invisible and do whatever we want with it. But I can't remember the last time I've been as excited about a movie as I am for
the Nosferatu one?
Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. That's going to rip so hard, and we'll cut this into a conversation about us talking about it being bad when it comes out later.
But if he treats it the way that, like, you know, The Lighthouse happened, and the way The Witch happened, I love The Witch. I love The Lighthouse.
I still
great.
really like to see it.
Oh, The Witch?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that shit rips. Really metal.
Considering how much oh my god, I love The Lighthouse. Like, it is such a bummer of a movie. And usually when a movie's kind of a bummer and just kind of down the entire time, I won't watch it again. I've seen that movie 4 times. It's so good.
I feel like this movie, if you were to remake it, I think you'd have to keep a lot of the wide shots.
I think it would be Scream.
I don't think you could do it very tight.
I think like you said earlier, but I think the remake of this movie is Scream.
Yeah?
Yeah, like you're gonna, I mean, like, I don't think a lot of this would translate that well to a remake, because it's, you know, Old Dark House.
Yeah.
There aren't Old Dark House movies anymore.
No.
So if this, again, if this was to be remade, it would probably be Scream, if you're gonna, in the most heartfelt way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Scream would be the remake of this.
I'll concede. That's a fine point. I will mainly concede the conceit is where the problem lies for sure. But I would love. I don't know. I would just love this to sort of transcend its contextual like shortcomings, the things that you know what I mean. Like I would like to see this somehow like. It would suck without Ernest Thesiger, but if you could find someone like that, you know, just those characters, him, his sister, the dad, Saul, I think that stuff's so strong. Like I say, I don't know how you get people into an Old Dark House, because again, that genre doesn't necessarily work anymore. But like to see those characters, I don't know, brought to life again in a way that could actually be unsettling and eerie in a way that this one isn't, would really be something. But like I say, like there'd be so many like kind of caveats and like conditions that must be met, and one of the biggest is, you know, you're right, the genre doesn't really exist, so like how do you translate it to the modern day? But anyways, that's just one of those little private wishes that'll never come true. Even if for some reason they decided to actually do a remake, it'd probably be garbage.
Yeah.
Because again, doesn't really work.
I don't see any horror remake being that good.
Yeah.
Currently, like in modern day, the way I feel like the way a good horror movie is made nowadays, and I'm just absolutely just thinking about Hereditary. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we differ on opinions of this, but I think it is basically the best horror movies I can think of are just here is the baseline vague plot of a horror movie that has been done 1,000 times, but we'll put something else on top of it, like Hereditary, the family drama, and just the sense of just dread over the whole thing. But also at the same time, it's just a cult who worships a demon, start to finish. But in my opinion, that movie works so well because it's just like we were kind of saying about this. It's not that scary through a lot of it.
Yeah.
You just get this feeling the entire time that you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, just on a side note, the car scene is the one that, like, I was like, fuck, bro. That's the one that'll always stick with me from that movie.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
It's that, but more
There's
so
no shaking that.
to me is right after the next morning when the mom is just hysterical about it in the bedroom. That gets me. Yeah.
But anyways, Old Dark House, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to put this is, again, grading it specific to the context. It's a golden age horror movie that I think absolutely deserves an A+.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is one of the strongest horror movies that Universal put out in the 1930s. Maybe not as culturally as important as some of the others, but this is a really strong outing for them.
For me, as someone who hasn't seen too many golden age horror movies, and especially comparing it to the next two movies that we watched, i.e. Carnival of Souls and Dracula, I'd give this one a solid B.
Okay.
I was much more taken with
Carnival of Souls.
Carnival of Souls, yes, but comparing it to another golden age, I liked Dracula a whole lot more.
Really? Okay.
I'm very excited to talk about that when we watch another vampire movie eventually.
I am excited to watch Dracula. I almost want to watch it alone again one more time because, like I said,
that's how I was feeling about Carnival of Souls. I was going to watch it.
Yes, that's an alone movie. You should absolutely watch it alone. Yeah, that's absolutely an alone movie. And in fact, I feel the same way about most, black and white horror specifically.
Yeah.
Whether it is Carnival of Souls or Night of the Living Dead, or whether it's Bride of Frankenstein and The Old Dark House, like just across generations, if it's in black and white, I think it works best. Almost like your Hogarth.
Yeah.
Sitting at home eating a Twinkie alone.
Also, something we didn't bring up about it, but I know it really struck me watching Dracula 2, and you brought it up during Old Dark House. No music.
Yeah.
And you were saying, that is because usually movies were accompanied by live orchestras. Mm-hmm. And I think it works so well. Mm-hmm. I think it works a lot better in Dracula. But yeah, I thought it was really. I think
it was frequently that it was paired with. I'm sure there are plenty of theaters, especially like during the Depression, that probably couldn't afford that.
Yeah.
And as they were saying in the Dracula documentary, the other thing that would happen too is that they would just kill the sound and add in slides for all the dialogue. So one of those three things would happen. But yes, one of them is that it'd be accompanied with live sound. But yeah, I'm glad that hit you as hard as it did, because that is one of the weird things that appeals to me so much about it, is like that just thick fog of just immersion that comes from there not being like, because that's one of the things about movies that by no means am I saying like, having a soundtrack, but that it's not until you're like watching something like Dracula you're kind of like, I guess it is really weird that like you just pretend like off-camera people aren't like playing the piano or something. Like, what is going on when the music is happening?
I mean, it could go. It could go. It's one of those things that could go one of two ways. I remember watching a documentary about Halloween, where people who saw the first cut or two of Halloween were like, "This sucks. Nothing happens." And then he put in the soundtrack, and people are like, "Oh, this is fucking scary." But there are, it happens a lot in modern movies and like especially like TV and stuff like that have scores throughout the whole thing. When there's no music in something, you're just like, oh fuck. Oh
Yeah.
shit, I am there. And that's something people point out all the time is like, they're like, oh yeah, in the scene, no music.
Yeah.
And you just hear
No
that.
Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Which is so weird because, like, again, I'm going to say it a million times. I never fucking think about it when I'm watching the movie. It's always later that I'm like, and fuck, that fucker's got no music.
Chris, I didn't even know the movie had no music until you just said that right
Really?
now. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not a lick of music in that movie. Oh. So anyways, you said you were taken more by this second one, so let's take you to the Carnival of Souls.
I, personally,
Yes.
love Carnival of Souls.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it is just like The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
When I watched it, 30 minutes in, I'm like, fuck, I think this might be one of my favorite movies. It's so good. I loved it so much. It was something you brought up while watching it, and it's, I think, an overused word, especially with us lately.
Oh, yeah.
Very Lynchian.
Yes. And as I've stated multiple times, I've read that it's something he cites often as
Yeah.
an influence.
Yeah, it's very obvious throughout the whole thing.
Even just in dialogue, just the way that they'll be like, yes, you know, when your fingers touch those keys, boy, you can really feel your soul in it.
Yeah.
And it just sounds like, you know, Detective Dale Cooper being like, you know, I'm going to tell you what, this cup of coffee, this is the best damn cup of coffee I ever had. Like, it's just so, like, quaint and, like...
Yeah, and it's like... It's similar in the sense of, like, hey, what's the plot of Blue Velvet? Some shit starts happening, and this guy starts investigating.
Yeah, boy decides to get involved in the mystery for, like...
Yeah.
No reason. I mean, it's... Yeah, but the guy... Yeah, okay. Yeah, Kyle finds an ear
Yeah.
and just kind of, decides to, like... It's almost like a Hardy Boy, I guess, is the best way to describe it, right? Like, it's just him... But yeah, I know exactly what you mean, where it's one of those things where it's like... The way that you could be like, oh, well, what is fucking, you know, hang on, I'm going to think of one. What's Project X about? Oh, some kids decide to throw a huge party.
Or Matthew Broderick becomes friends with a monkey.
Yes. You know, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Project X, maybe it's a great movie. I've never seen it. But,
I don't think it is.
You know, also, other things. What's Drive about? Well, it's about a guy who drives a getaway car and falls in love.
What's Twin Peaks about? Some spooky shit in the woods.
Yeah, spooky shit in the woods.
And yeah, that's what I think this is. Like, what's Carnival of Souls about? A girl has a car accident, gets chased by a ghost.
Yes. Before we'll do it soon. Maybe we'll do it afterwards. I had plans tonight. I don't think I'm doing them. I really want you to watch. There's an episode of The Twilight Zone, and before I ever saw Carnival of Souls, it was always one of my favorite episodes. Still is one of my favorite episodes to this day. It's called The Hitchhiker.
Mm-hmm.
It's the exact same plot as this movie. Not to say that this movie like ripped it off or like that. I'm just saying it's an old dark house story, right?
And hey, personal opinion, this might be a hot take. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if for your movie you want to rip off the plot of a Twilight Zone episode, more power to you. In my opinion, I think it totally works.
And yes, I love this thing, and I really think that episode, there's a good chance. I really think, I mean, you'll love it. I think it's this same thing, just in a 20-minute format. Things it doesn't necessarily have going for it in the same way, but I guess in different ways, right? Because for everything I may go on to say throughout our conversation about like the atmosphere and the mood and the soundtrack and how like specifically the fact that it's this dissonant like organ music playing the whole time that feeds into it and stuff like that. I mean, you can kind of almost say about the Twilight Zone, right? There's this weird atmosphere about the Twilight Zone that always kind of... But anyways, to Carnival of Souls. I guess, what did you know going into Carnival of Souls? Because it is very close to the mainstream. I'm not going to say it's like a fucking, you know, hidden gem.
Yeah.
But I would say it's obscured. It's a little foggy.
Yeah.
It's like right there, but, you know... Not on the tip of everybody's tongue.
Yeah.
I see it playing at midnight theaters often, and it's on the Criterion channel, I think. And
I knew nothing about this.
Yeah.
Before we watched it, very specifically because you told me nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
You just kept telling me, "Oh, you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it."
Because how do you sell it? I guess
Exactly.
Like, how would you sell it to somebody?
I think you sold it to me the perfect way. You're like, "This is a huge influence on David Lynch. It's basically a Twilight episode, and I can't really tell you what it's about."
Yeah.
And I fucking love this, like from stem to stern.
I will interrupt you for a moment to say, am I fair in saying that, to a degree, it's kind of a better Donnie Darko?
Maybe. It's been so long since I've seen Donnie Darko. My biggest memory of it is that I don't like it.
Well, Donnie Darko, as you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's the whole idea that, like, Donnie was supposed to die that night when the helicopter fucking thing fell in his thing. He didn't, and in doing so, he's created an unstable universe where eventually he has to come to the terms with the fact that he has to die in order for the rest of the world to not implode or whatever it is. Now, I don't think that the Carnival of Souls gets that deep, but basically the gist of the Carnival of Souls is that she did die then, and I don't want to really wager, because I couldn't articulate how, but for some reason we just watch the events play out as if she were some sort of semi kind of ghost until eventually she is taken by the spirits slash potentially a death figure.
Yeah.
And that's when she finally meets the demise that she was supposed to meet, and then things are set right and she's found dead as she was supposed to be found.
Yeah, this is
kind of.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah,
this is definitely one of those things where, like, I'd like to see this again before I'm like, okay, this is what I think it is.
Yeah, that's loose. I mean, like I said, it's not definitive. It's just kind of like, that's me kind of applying the logic that I have gathered from too many episodes of the Twilight Zone, I guess.
Okay.
Right. Because a lot of the Twilight Zone is sort of a character being like, well, yes, I'm death and I'm here to get you.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I love this movie. There's just so much about this that I was just thrilled with. The biggest thing that comes to mind, I mean, not the biggest, but the first thing that comes to mind is just wild scene transitions.
Yeah.
That are so good, and again, just like Lynchian, this feels like an overused word, but just an overused phrase, just ahead of its time, I feel.
Yeah.
Like her, like, switching the car on, and then it cuts to her flipping something on an organ.
Yeah. Or the guy being like, oh, it's right over here. And then the camera does a weird, like, 360 thing and lands, like, with the door opening to her boarding house room.
It's so good.
Yeah. On a side note real quick, there were multiple times where we did say, like, wow, that's really ahead of its time. Wow, that's really modern even. But I also want to give a shout out to the boarding house owner. You can take as many baths as you like. I'm not one to fuss about that.
Yeah, that seems very David Lynch humor to me, and I love it. I would say maybe the weakest part of this movie, I would say, is the guy across the hall.
Yeah.
I hated everything with him, but I do like it leading up to her just being like, I can't be alone right now, so I'm just going to go on a date with this guy.
Yes.
But I just hated him every time I saw him.
Yeah.
Which I think is the point, but still. I love her. Can't think of her name.
Neither can I offhand.
Don't even know the actress's name. But she just like...
I don't really know anybody's name in this.
Yeah. Just like... but I would say just like Ernest from Old Dark House. She's just so striking to look at.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like she's conventionally beautiful, but she's just... Yeah, I just like looking at her.
And on a side note real quick, like, part of that, like, as soon as we were talking about not really remembering anybody's name, that happens all the time in movies, so what the fuck am I talking about? But I am going to say that, like, this movie feels a lot like a dream you half remembered from last night.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I just had the weirdest dream. I was a woman, and I was like an organ player, and I just moved, to this boarding house with this woman, and there was only one other guy living there, and I don't know, I can't really remember much else. But
maybe my favorite, like, personal thing I love about this movie is, I think it happens a few times, but, she's a church organist. There's a few times where she's, talking to a priest or whoever owns the church, in two different churches, I believe. And they're like, well, don't you think that you should do this, or God would want this, or this and that? And she's like, hey.
Fuck God.
Listen, I play the goddamn organ, right? That's what you're paying me to do.
Yeah.
And I play the fucking organ. And everyone's just like, okay, lady. And then she sits down and starts playing the organ, and everyone's like, she is playing the goddamn shit out of that organ.
Yeah. And then I do like, even though it may be corny or whatever, I love that like she's sitting there playing the organ at one point and she starts fantasizing about that man and like the spirits and the whatever, and then it just gets abruptly interrupted by the priest just going like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
That was satanic. That was fucked up. Well, you're fired. You lost your job. What in the hell was that?
Yeah, and I love whatever it is she's playing doesn't make sense, and it's weird and it's creepy, but it also feels like it fits. It feels like this might be a jump, and this might be just me reading into it a little bit, but it feels like the movie. Mm-hmm. Like it all fits and it all connects, but also none of it really does, and it's just kind of out of place.
It's so oddly, like, intensely cohesive. Like, every little piece is important and builds to this larger thing.
Yeah.
It's genuinely, like, an experience.
Yeah.
Which is always a corny thing, I feel like, to say about a movie. But, like, this is a movie where I'd say, like, no, this is, like... And that's why I say it's a movie... I think when we were talking about The Old Dark House, I was talking about, like, this is a movie you should see alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, this is definitely something I do plan on watching alone pretty soon, or just again.
Just at midnight in your room with all the lights off, under your little blankie.
Under my little blankie.
Yeah.
What else did I like about this movie?
Well, on a side note, real quick, shout out to the director.
Yeah.
I think his name's like Henry Havrick or something like that. Or
his name is his name is a name that's normal, but it has an H instead of whatever the word should be.
Yeah.
Or the actual letter should be. Let me look it up. Keep talking about it.
But anyways, long story short, he directed this bitch.
He's the monster?
And he's like the main ghoul. I will make mention of the fact that also huge inspiration on...
His name is Herc Harvey.
Yeah, Herc Harvey. There you go. Yeah, huge inspiration also on George Romero, specifically for the look of his zombies in Night of the Living Dead, the original, which I would really like to watch with you very soon.
Absolutely.
So Herc apparently scrounged together, I don't know how, I haven't read much, $33,000, shot this bitch. He shot it a lot of the times without, sort of what, in film lingo they call guerrilla style, which
no permits,
usually means no permits and shit, no permission, just kind of getting it done. And it's the only feature he's ever made.
Really?
Otherwise, he spent his entire career working for like an educational travel guide, some sort of company like that, right? And sometime in the mid-'80s became a film instructor at the University of Kansas and died. Rest in peace, God rest his soul. And, something I, thought about and subsequently brought up to you while we were watching the film is like, fuck, dude, like, God, imagine just being a student who happened to have also seen Carnival of Souls.
Yeah.
And just come in and be like, are you fucking kidding me? What are you doing here? Not like in a way where it's like, oh, so pathetic. Like you wouldn't say that verbatim, but just that thing where it's like, what, like if you were going to like, school and just for some reason all semester Gary Oldman was like next to you. You're just like, why are you here? But not like in a way where it's like, why are you slumming it? Just that kind of a thing where it's like, what a beautiful gift this is. I'm sitting next to Gary Oldman every day. Just that kind of a thing where it's like, my film instructor is Herc Harvey?
Yeah, also at the same time though, if I hadn't seen Carnival of Souls and I had Professor Harvey and just one day decided to watch his movie, I'd be like... All right, Professor. And like you said, this movie just feels like a dream that I had the other night. So yeah, there's so much, like, I can't even think. I'm having a hard time thinking of a lot of this movie.
One of the things I love that you did not get to experience because we watched it, I believe, on a free rip. Sorry, we kind of soft pirated from the Criterion channel.
No, we watched this on HBO.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, on HBO, it's the Criterion channel, so you get that little logo, and then you get like all these like production company logos and stuff like that. The way that I experience it, and the way that most people experience it, is on a fucking this is a public domain DVD, and so none of that shit happens when you put the DVD in. There's no play menu. It just fucking starts with that shot of them in the car, just immediately, just hard cut to that.
I mean, even with all the logos at the beginning, it's still jarring.
Yeah.
Like, it's just almost mid-sentence or something.
Yeah.
Like, you want to race?
Yeah.
And it's just like, fuck it, all right, I guess we're going, yeah.
Yeah. And it's so weird because how jarring it is at the same time from that moment. It just, the cohesion, it has that atmosphere the whole time. I feel like there are no, like, this is not a movie with, like, highs and lows. It just somehow keeps the same fucking feel the whole time. So I don't want to do this because we've discussed many times that just describing the plot of the movie is not interesting. Yeah. But yeah, girls and boys, 2 separate cars, race, crash on bridge. For some reason, 3 hours later, main girl comes out of lake.
I read something where they crashed through that bridge. They did have permission to do that, but the stipulation being like, yeah, you got to pay to fix this bridge though. And he's like, can't do.
And then we get the backstory about her being an organist who's going to move soon, and then she boarding houses and, you know, sees the, like, gazebo thing. That's something we haven't talked about much. The fucking, like, circus, the actual carnival grounds and stuff like that, the abandoned carnival. And the only thing that I really want to say about it is the shots of all of these, again, spirits just dancing in the main ballroom is just otherworldly. Mesmerizing,
So
hypnotizing, beautiful. Can't take your eyes off of it, especially like when they do the shots of a couple of them spinning, like almost as if they had like the fucking harness on and the camera's like pointed at their face and they're just, you know, spinning or whatever. It's just, again, like something, you know, as we were talking about with the Old Dark House, where like this movie is not scary, but fuck if it isn't like eerie and like unsettling. Like, again, like just like,
it's just like The Shining again, to bring it up. It just gets you in not even a mood, but it just gets you in a state of mind the entire time where you're like,
yeah, like when you wake up from a dream, you're like, what the fuck was that shit last night? Like, for some reason, I remember like an old woman with gray hair and she had like 2 knives like right in my face for some reason, and then I remember waking up. Just that kind of a thing where it's like,
oh, it would take just 1 knife to kill me.
Yeah, why the 2? Yeah. And that's the thing, in a very Lynchian way, where it's like, why would she have 2 knives?
I had a dream.
Yeah.
I might have told you this already, but I had a dream that I was... Fuck, I can't remember the beginning of it because it's a dream, but I was just, you know, somewhere with a bunch of people, and from around a corner, I heard someone screaming, and a man in a yellow t-shirt with long, greasy brown hair came running up to me screaming and stabbed me. And it woke me up, and I went, whoa, that was fucked up.
Yeah.
Then I went back to bed, and I had a dream that I was at a party with some people. Like, I spilled something, and I was like, oh, I'm sticky. And we were in a hotel room, and I was like, I'm going to go take a shower. And I took a shower, and then when I opened the shower door, I was on a street, and I could just see, like, one street light, like, in fog. And there was a man in, like, a crane bucket thing, you know, where they work on street lights. And he was working on it, and I was like, man, I've never seen this at night before. And then from over here, I could hear someone yelling, and I turned and I looked, and it was the same man in the same yellow t-shirt with the same long hair going, ah, and he stabbed me. Knife. And he stabbed me, and I woke up, and I'm like, I'm not going back to bed
ever again. Another thing we forgot to mention was that she starts hanging out with a psychiatrist who's telling her all about how crazy she is.
Maybe a psychiatrist. Because at one point, he goes, listen, I'm not a psychiatrist.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Don't know what he is.
Our running joke was that he was a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Something before we get too far away from it, when she's driving to the new church and she passes the carnival, she has a vision of the main ghost man, Herc Harrison. And she's like, ah, and she like veers off the road. But then while she's driving, when she looks over, she sees him in the car window. And that's one of those things like we were mentioning earlier. Every time that happened, I'm like, fuck, how are they doing that?
Yeah.
It's like a magic trick. I'm like, how are they getting that dude's fucking reflection in this car window? I mean, like, and it's like at a weird angle, so it's not him standing on the other side of the window as she's driving against a screen. It's good. I love it.
Another thing that I love is it does this really cool, like, I want to say tasteful, reserved, subtle, and then also almost dreamlike thing, right? Where, like, he's never doing anything necessarily threatening. He's always just there, or walking towards where she is generally. Like when she sees him from like one floor up or whatever, and he's sitting down looking directly at her, stands up still looking at her, and then walks presumably to start going up the stairs, but you lose sight of him. And it's just one of those things where, like, again, like, is there anything? It's not like he fucking pulled a gun or like jumped down from the top of a chifforobe and went like or anything like that. Like, but it's so unsettling that he's being normal. Specifically, that like he's just there.
And I think very specifically that scene is perfectly timed because it happens just long enough. I think the last time you see him is when she's in the car. When she looks down those stairs and she sees him, I'm like, oh fuck, right, this guy.
And he's always smiling too.
Yeah.
And then I love when the boarding house woman comes in, and she's like, "Here's your sandwich and your coffee." And he's like, "Who's that man in the hallway?" And she's like, "I'm scared enough of this house as it is. There's no man out there." And then she's even like she pulls the door, and she's so fucking like tense that she like spooks herself a little bit when the lock catches it. You know.
I'm gonna say she's my MVP of this movie.
Yeah, she kills it. She kills it.
Love it.
Yeah.
I also read Candace Hilgoss, the actress's name.
Of the boarding house woman?
Nope, main woman.
Main woman, okay.
Mary Henry, character's name.
Mary Henry.
After this movie came out, her agency dropped her.
Really?
They're like, no, we're not. This is insane. This movie is insane. We can't represent you anymore.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I mean, that probably sucked for her. She probably had a hard time after that, I assume.
But right now, 2021, two guys who have no connection to it, that's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, looking back the way you would in like a memoir, to just read someone be like, yeah, and then I did this movie and it was so weird that I got let go.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's so cool. You know, like, imagine, like, I'm reading, Kim Gordon's memoir right now, and that'd be so cool if at one point she's like, yeah, and then Sonic Youth put out this record, and the label is like, yeah, what was that? Why?
Just in any situation, having your boss be like,
that was too weird. Get out of here.
What was that? You're out of here.
Yeah. Oh, God. Explain. What were you thinking? You thought that would be good? You thought this was,
You thought this would represent us well?
Yeah. You really thought this would be the next Jaws? Yeah, so overall, I'm going to say, this has... Also, on a side note, like, as much as we say Lynchian, or that it influenced Night of the Living Dead, again, I really feel like I've never seen this.
Yeah.
The closest thing out of everything that it's influenced, again, is probably something that probably had a mild influence on it, is like a couple episodes of The Twilight Zone. I'm thinking of one where I think it's about a woman who's actually like a fucking mannequin but doesn't know it. And there's a lot of scenes like the ones where people can't hear her in that episode of The Twilight Zone.
That,
yeah. And then the second one would be the Hitchhiker episode, which I would like to make you watch even just right now.
If we watch that, we gotta watch Scandy Darky tonight. I want to see it so bad.
Let's watch a vampire one first so we can do the vampire before we forget the vampires.
I just finished the book. I want to see Scandy Darky.
Don't worry, we got to do vampires first. Let's finish vampires.
We'll see.
So yeah, and like I say, and like you said, it very modern and ahead of its time, and just one of those things where you just want to sing its praises from the rooftops,
Yeah, like it's like you said, it's like a Twilight Zone episode where the entire time I'm like, okay, where's this going? What's happening? All right, but like we've said 1,000 times, I'm just there. Like never in a Twilight episode.
Almost like reading a book.
Yeah, never in a Twilight Zone episode. Am I like, ooh, I'm here. I'm there right now. But all through Carnival of Souls, I'm like, fuck, I am in this Carnival of Souls.
And it does have a nice kind of ending and closure for sure. Yeah. And so do the Golden Age horror movies. But also, like a Golden Age horror movie, I feel like it just kind of ends.
Yeah. But it makes more sense because it kind of ends just the way it kind of starts.
Yeah. It's like a closing the loop.
Yeah. Very much so.
But yeah, you do, but you don't. I mean, I guess in a sense, her just being dead the way she was supposed to is kind of like, whatever her name is from Wizard of Oz waking up and her whole family being around her. It's kind of like that in its own way. Like, it is resolution, sure, but also I feel like it does just kind of, it just kind of starts and then it just kind of ends, and the whole time you're like, oh wow, I can't wait to see that again.
Yeah, love it.
I can't wait to be there again.
I'll watch it. I might watch it tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another A+ in my book. I'm sorry to keep handing them out like they're free kittens, but
Yeah, I can't remember what all my scores have been, but I'm gonna give this one an A+.
yeah.
For sure. Loved it. Loved every second of it. I appreciate you making me watch it.
Yeah. Thanks for having the patience too.
Yeah, I will. Chris, I love being friends with you. You guys filled my life with laughter and love.
Aw.
But there's nothing I get more out of our friendship than you making me watch movies I probably never want to see.
You have filled my life with laughter and love, and I'd have to get back to you on what it is very uniquely in that sense that you bring to my life. And no offense needed, I mean intended there. It's just you've put me on the goddamn spot by saying something like that.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay.
I'm
So,
sure we'll check back in next week.
yeah.
You got 7 days or until we watch 2 more movies.
So guilty. Oh, no. Okay. Well, I think that's that.
That's that.
Mattress Man.
God, that's what it is. I was thinking for like the last 5 minutes. I'm like, fuck, what's Chris's sign off?
What's
so I can say
yours?
it before him. I don't know. I don't have one. I always just say that's that, Mattress Man, because I get scared and I never remember the sign off until we're doing these.
Well, said it before and I'll say it again. That's that, Mattress Man.
Smoking.
If you need more soup, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or go to our website, eatingsoupalone.com. And until next time,